Welcome back to the IBFP. Here's your host, Boxing Nuke.
Welcome back, fight fans. In this week's boxing rant, our question of the week is, where the fuck is Keith Thurman? Now we're going to dig into that and a little bit more about Keith Thurman. The first thing is Keith Thurman has been sidelined with a slew of injuries for a while now. His last fight was against Danny Swift Garcia. He won that by a 12-round split decision in March. Basically, the injuries have kept him out of the ring for over a year. And so it looks like here the nearest future date that he's anticipated to return is in October. But seeing how we're even closer to that date, it looks like it's more than likely going to be pushed back to November, December, possibly on the Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury undercard. And that seems like the most likely event before he ends the year. He can get that tune-up in. Here's a direct quote from Steven Espinoza. He could be back around October and might wind up on the undercard of a big event, as perhaps Spence Garcia. Now, we know that Spence Garcia is not going to happen this year. It's been pushed back to 2019. So the only other Showtime fight that's happening this year that's a big event is the Tyson Fury Deontay Wilder pay-per-view. That would be a great undercard fight, having Keith Thurman fight a tune-up, display his skills to the world again, and see if he's still got what it takes to perform at an elite level. Now, my rant on Keith Thurman is I think he needs to vacate his last belt. There's no point in holding on to it because you're unable to defend it at an elite level, and it's been over a year. At that point, you need to vacate the damn thing. Manny Pacquiao and Mikey Garcia should fight for the vacated belt next. That's the only thing that makes sense. You got Mikey Garcia, pound-for-pound fighter in his prime, willing and wanting to move up to 147 pounds to fight for a world title, to fight the biggest and best opposition. Basically, the news has come out that Mikey Garcia is in talks with Manny Pacquiao for a fight, and also Errol Spence for next year. So he's trying to fight top guys at 147, and he wants to fight for a belt. Why not fight for Keith Thurman's vacated belt? I think that makes the most sense as to what to do with that belt. I think Keith Thurman, since he's unable to defend it at least for the next 2 to 3 fights, because he's going to need at least 2 to 3 tune-ups before he's ready to compete with the best fighters at 147 pounds. I can't see Keith Thurman walking in off the street and fighting, after one tune-up, a guy like Errol Spence. Just too powerful, not ready for that, not after one fight. He's not going to fight a Porter or Garcia after one fight. I just don't think that he would be at that stage after this many injuries and after this much time off. It don't make any fucking sense. Then you also have Terrence Crawford. No fucking way he's taking that. Arguably the best boxer in the division at 147 pounds. He fucking needs a lot of time to get himself right. He needs at least 2 to 3 tune-ups at the very least. Now, the guy that they're talking about fighting, that's going to be Josecito Lopez. He's 36-7 with 19 knockouts. He's 34 years old. He's on a consecutive 3-fight win streak. The last time that he took a loss was against Andre Berto. He was stopped in the 6th round. Now, if you look at that, we all know that Andre Berto's not on the same level as Keith Thurman, but Andre Berto would make a hell of a tune-up fight. So at this point, Josecito Lopez would be a great tune-up fight. I think it'll be perfect for Keith Thurman to get that bounce back. I highly doubt that there will be any Showtime major events in October, as they're talking about Wilder Fury is going to look likely for November. And so since that's the case, and it's more than likely going to be on the November card, and Keith Thurman probably would have a little more time to heal and get ready for that before that card is announced within the next few weeks, hopefully, because you never know, then I think that this is the type of opponent Thurman should be fighting. And after this, he should step up another level and fight a guy like Jesse Vargas. That's a second jump, but still a tune-up. And then after he fights a guy like Jesse Vargas, he should end up fighting a better guy and better competition. And so that could even be a guy like an Adrian Broner, which I think would be a fabulous fight. I think people would love to see Adrian Broner versus Keith Thurman. It'll build up the hype and anticipation. for that. Keith Thurman still might not be right after 2 fights. That's why I'd like to see something like that. I'm not looking for it for anything more than just a good, strong tune-up, because that's what Adrian Broner is at this point, a fucking tune-up for good fighters. But if he doesn't take a third tune-up, then I'd like him to go into the Porter Garcia winner, Spence, or Crawford. Now, don't get me wrong. Unlike a lot of these fanboys and these fanboys channels and reports, I'm not the type of guy that want to see Keith Thurman thrown into the fire right away. I want to see the best fucking Keith Thurman. I want to see Keith Thurman compete at the same level he was when he left, and that's at the very top elite level. And for him to do that and perform at an elite level, he needs the fucking tune-ups, he needs the rounds in, he needs to get right. Now, we know that no matter how much time you've taken off, power still holds true. We know how no matter how old a fighter gets, power still holds through. So if all of these things are going to be the case, then let's just be honest with ourselves. Keith Thurman needs time to bounce back, need a couple bounce back fights, then he'll be ready for an Errol Spence, Sean Porter, Danny Garcia, and a Terrence Crawford. That's the order of things I want to see. Don't tell me, like a lot of these fanboys, I'll throw him in there with Spence, he's ducking Spence. How the fuck can he be ducking Spence when he's fucking hurt? He's been on a long layoff. Could you imagine Errol Spence getting Keith Thurman after a long layoff? Keith Thurman loses, and they'll crown Errol Spence as the greatest fighter since sliced bread. There's no fucking way he's the greatest fighter. You're fighting your second fighter coming off a layoff, and the first fighter was Kell Brook. Now, clearly, Errol Spence shouldn't get as much credit for the Kell Brook victory, because you're fighting a guy coming off a layoff who's had basically a facial fracture and coming off a stoppage loss, and it's coming back down in weight. Why the fuck should you get elite level credit for that? Kell Brook's not even established as an elite fighter at that point. He dared to be great. We liked that spirit from Kell Brook. We thought he performed well before the injury, but that's still not an elite level fighter, and that's not an elite level competition, and especially a guy coming off a stoppage loss. Let's be real and reasonable about this. Don't be fanboys. Don't bring your own bias into it. Be 100, and I'm gonna be 100, completely unbiased. I look at a guy like Keith Thurman and I turn around and I say, look, get you a couple tune-ups in, go ahead and fight you a very, very top opponent. You can pick any guy you want. And now if Keith Thurman was bold, and I think will be more on an even playing field, get one tune-up in and come back and fight Manny Pacquiao. I think that'll be fantastic. If not, go ahead and get a couple tune-ups, maybe two or three in, and get back to that elite level, then take on these top guys at 147, and we'll see if one time is truly back. Once again, this is the IBFP. Please share, like, and subscribe. And where the fuck is Keith Thurman?